Hey everyone, Mary here, and today I'm going to show you how to make twin cutting boards. With the holidays just around the corner, this is a really awesome gift that you can make for friends and family alike. For my cutting board, I used a piece of walnut and some reclaimed maple floorboards. Now, when using rough lumber, you need to kind of purge the end before you start. So I usually start by marking off about 1 inch and I cut it off on the miter saw. And if it snaps apart like that, cut off another inch, and keep going until you run into solid wood. Okay, this is probably a good time to also mention that you can download a free step-by-step checklist on my website with all the steps to make a cutting board, so I'll leave a link in the description below. Alright, now I can go ahead and mark my rough lumber to about 1 or 2 inches longer than I want my cutting board to be, and then cut it on the miter saw. So I headed over to my joiner and I made a couple passes just to flatten one of the faces. And then I placed the flat face against the joiner's fence and flattened the adjacent edge of the board. I like to mark the jointed edges so I know which side is what. The last step is to run the board through my planer with the jointed face down and the rough face facing upwards. I did this until the top face was flat, and I made sure to check for square using my engineer square. After that, I also ran my reclaimed floorboards through my planer, starting by taking the varnish off the top. And yes, I know this is rough on the planer, but this is a really old planer that I got secondhand for this purpose exclusively. I then proceeded to cut off some of the tongue and grooves from my reclaimed floorboards just to clean them up a bit. After all my lumber was milled, I went ahead and I set my fence to 1 3/8, and then I just proceeded to rip as many pieces as I could out of my walnut and out of my maple boards. You of course want to make sure that you're placing your jointed edge up against your fence. And also just to note that I placed it at 1 3/8 because that'll be the thickness of my board. I'm actually going to flip over all the pieces and have the rough thickness be 1 3/8, and then once I put it through my planer, it should end up being about 1.5 inches when I'm all done. So I was a bit embarrassed to realize through this project that my table saw blade was really dull. It was leaving burn marks on this hardwood. I guess I usually cut pine, so I didn't really notice. So I eventually ran out and got a new 50-tooth combination blade, and let me tell you, it makes such a difference. I mean, look at this. I could rub my hands on this old blade and it didn't even scratch or anything. So anyhow, let's talk about the glue up. So I laid some clamps open on their back and I placed a scrap piece of wood on each end, and there are different reasons for that. If you want, you could read more about it on the blog post. But for now, let's talk about the layout. So I started by laying out all the pieces in the design that I wanted, and I really lined them up in the way and where I wanted them to be in the final layout. And then it's good to trace, I use a triangle, but you can trace whatever pattern you want just to know where everything goes when you flip them back into place. Next, you want to apply liberal amounts of water-resistant glue, and then make sure you coat all of the surfaces with a brush, and then flip them back up to place. Next, I went ahead and tightened up the clamps and until I got some good squeeze out. And then I added a few more clamps across the top. It's a good idea to scrape off some of the excess glue while it's still moist, so about 30 to 45 minutes after you clamped it, just scrape off anything that you can using a plastic scraper, and then let it dry overnight. Remove the clamps, and if there's any still hardened glue on the surface, you want to scrape it off before running it through your planer. I ran the blank through my planer, alternating top and bottom until both sides were nice and flat. To me, this is one of the most satisfying parts of the build. Next, I used my mini Crosscut sled to cut the board in half, and then squared off both ends of the boards. I actually built this mini Crosscut sled really quickly just for this project because I didn't have one, so if you're interested and you want me to do a post about it, let me know. Alright, looking good. Now time for the final steps. I use my palm router with a round over bit just to round over all of the edges of the board. Then it's the time for sanding, so I started at 120 grit and eventually moved up to 150 grit and then to 20 grit. Now before finishing, you want to pop the grain using some water, so just spray on some water and let it dry. This is to raise the grain. If you skip this step, your beautiful new cutting board will become rough after the first time you wash it. After it dries, resume sanding with 220 grit until smooth. And if you want an ultra smooth finish, you can even take it up a step and sand with some 320 grit. The last step before applying a finish is to wipe off the board so you get rid of all the sawdust. I'm using Howard mineral oil. This is butcher block or cutting board specific oil. It's a food grade mineral oil. So I went ahead and applied it as per the instructions, which is basically to just pour it on, watch that grain pop, rub it in. You want to put it in a good amount, let it sit for about 20 minutes and then reapply. And you want to do about 3 or 4 coats for a brand new board. Hey, hope you liked this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more DIY videos to come. And don't forget to head over to my website for the free downloadable step-by-step checklist on how to make a cutting board. Thanks for watching.